Hi everyone, Sid Rock back here in the bathroom. Today's shaving kit will be the exact same thing as the last two times, but before I jump into content, I just want to put a little asterisk in front of this video. I'm presently in day 2 or 3 of a head cold. It hasn't been that bad, but it's been long enough for me to kind of fuck up the upper edge of my lip and the nose from all the nose blowing. And it actually hurts when I smile, which for those of you who know me is quite the predicament for me to be in, but I'm gonna soldier on. I mean, I'm good enough to shave so I can set this thing up. And in today's video, I'd like to get into something that I like to call, well, it depends. I'll either call it, depending on my mood, the unholy trinity or the real axis of evil. I'd like to get into two terms that I think are really important, but sadly, at least as far as definitions go, the first two words, most people don't even know what they are. And if I have time and I think it's important enough, I'll go into the third word, which in my opinion is the link between the first two. So I'm going to start with the fruits, and then I'm going to talk about one of the roots, and again, if I have time, I'll go into the tree and the trunk and all that stuff, what the unholy glue that puts those two things together. So the first word I would like to get into is Democide. This, if you're already familiar with the ideas of liberty, you know what this word is, most likely. And if you don't, you don't. Now, democide, put very simply, is the murder of people by their own government. And before I get into stats, which I don't have that many of, I just want to point out that democide stats do not include war. So if you add up democide and war casualties and all that shit, you can see that the solutions that we rely on to solve complex social problems are actually one of the most dangerous things known to mankind. So quick statistic is that in the last century, 260 million people, more than 260 million people have been killed by their own governments. Again, this does not include war. So just to do a quick comparison, and again, I just did 5 seconds of research. I don't think it's very exhaustive, but I think the point I'm going to make is clear. One of the most common things that people agree upon as being dangerous, at least when they think about it, is driving. And according to the 2-second research I did to Wikipedia, I'll put links under this video anyway, even though with 5 seconds of research you can get them too. That's how I got them. In the last year, 1.2 million people died from traffic accidents. Now, if let's just say we assume everything is constant and multiply that by 100 years, which doesn't make sense for reasons that are obvious, but if we took the traffic deaths of the last year, multiplied them by 100, that's still less than half of people who are dead via democide, i.e. murdered by their own governments. And again, this does not include war. And something I'd like to point out also is that there are some cases that end up tallied up as traffic accidents, which I would consider democide. Straightforward example, let's say some guy is, yeah, it's a guy. So some guy is speeding down the road, guilty of nothing but a code violation. And if you want more clarification on what I mean by code violation, I'll refer you to my video on the dual role of cops. So this dude is just driving down the road, speeding. Some copper, presumably a speed trap, catches him, decides to pursue, and ends up running him off the road, and he dies. By most norms, that would be counted as a traffic accident. I would definitely count that as a case of democide. assuming this guy isn't a bank robber or something where there's an actual victim. So I think that covers it for now as far as Democide is concerned. Again, this doesn't include war, and I find it absolutely tragic and dangerous that most people don't even know what this word is. That's part of my goal with releasing this video. The other word I'd like to get into, which again, I don't think, I'd assume most people don't know what this word is solipsism. And I probably should have timed this better, but I'll do my best. I copy-pasted the top of the Wikipedia article on solipsism, which I'm about to read. And just to give you an idea of how relatively obscure this word is, there is no entry for solipsism in Webster's dictionary. I don't remember if I looked up Democide or not, but there's definitely... well, it's either Democide or solipsism, but one of those two words or both is not in Webster's dictionary. So, according to the Wikipedia, solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind. As a metaphysical position, solipsism goes further to the conclusion that the world and other minds do not exist. Now, I'm going to be upfront and say that I categorically reject solipsism. As a matter of fact, and I know according to my own rules this is kind of an appeal to authority, but I think it's an interesting anecdote that Mark Passio refers to solipsism as a mental illness. I believe that there's a strong case to be made, although it would be, in my view, more beneficial to argue against solipsism in its own, in a more compassionate way. But that's the thing with solipsism. It's one of these things, and again, for the first time actually, I'm not an expert on epistemology, but I do know enough to explain why solipsism falls flat on its very face. How can I say this? Something I picked up over the years is one of the ways to know what is true, and for those of you who didn't know what epistemology is, that's the branch of philosophy that deals with how you know what's true, how you know what you know. And if you identify as a solipsist, I am definitely speaking to you with that last bit. So one of the ways that you can know that something is true is if you cannot argue against it without self-refuting. That's kind of a clue that it's true. Stefan Molyneux calls these self-detonating statements. I prefer to call them self-poning statements, but the bottom line is if you argue against it and instantly self-refute, that's kind of a clue that it's true. So the thing with solipsism is, if you boil it down to one statement, again, I'm not gonna go with the metaphysics. I might come back to that in a second, but for now, let's just talk about epistemology, which rests on top of metaphysics. The solipsism boiled down to a nutshell is, I am sure that nothing is sure, or I know that nothing can be known. It's kind of obvious to see that it's a self-poning statement, and the beauty is that Any other way you might want to try to argue in favor of solipsism kind of brings it back to the epistemological question. Like, on my way home earlier, I was trying to imagine some dude trying to argue in favor of solipsism by saying basically, well, this dead guy said this, and that dead guy said that. And if you're talking about the epistemology, So yeah, if you're talking about the epistemological layer, when you argue in any other way than self-poning, by saying, let's say, René Descartes, I know that he's one of these famous examples of universal doubt, yada yada yada. But if you don't openly self-pone by saying, I'm sure that nothing is sure, or I know that nothing can be known, and you just try to skip to, well, René Descartes said this and that in his books, every sentence that you say about it, I can just interject, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? So that's one of the big problems of solipsism, is that if you address it from the epistemological standpoint, it just self-pones right on its face. And if you try to skip past the epistemology, you can be yanked back down to the epistemology, because as a solipsist, you're basically opening yourself up to the constant, how do you know, how do you know, how do you know? Kind of reminds me of, I was at a libertarian event several months ago, and one of the guys mentioned in passing, I was raised agnostic, and I said, are you sure? And he didn't notice the joke. It took a few seconds for him to catch on, but it's that kind of thing that you open yourself up to. So again, if you cannot argue in favor of it without self-poning, most likely false. Before I let you go, I'll just give a passing to why these two things are so important, and I'll just mention the unholy glue that holds them together, which is moral relativism. I'm sure most of you saw that coming, or at least most of you who haven't just learned just now what Democide is and what Solipsism is. So the thing with moral relativism, where you argue that there's no such thing as objective right and objective wrong, is that first of all, I hope you never argued against the Nazis. I hope you never implied that what the Nazis did was wrong. But second of all, and I think this is more important, the causal, it's not necessarily causal, but it's one of those things, kind of a semi-slippery slope fallacy, I must admit, but I think that the case is relatively strong that solipsism is dangerous because it can potentially lead to democide, and as the last century has shown, democide is a really dangerous thing, more than twice as likely to kill you than traffic accidents, and if you are consistent, and I use the word lightly, loosely, if you are consistent with your solipsism, it could lead to democide. And that's where I hold that solipsism is a very dangerous metaphysical, epistemological position to hold, because of the dangers of moral relativism, which can be used to justify democide. And again, the most of the numbers in democide, as far as the body count is concerned, is through genocides, ethnic cleansings, things like that, murdered by their own governments, not including war. But I wouldn't be surprised if during the 1930s in Germany, there was some people going, well, it's not perfect, but it's the best system we got, which is more an example of moral relativism, I guess. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. So basically, beware of the solipsism because it might lead to democide, and then you and your loved ones are basically fucked. So thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and share. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow me at SidRockMTL on Twitter. And there are links to all these under this video. So thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next shave. Hopefully I'll be feeling better. You take care.